So we're in the third chapter of Bava Metzia. We're close to the end of the third chapter. We'll actually finish it tomorrow with questions about reuse, what we would call in modern financial terms rehypothecation. If you've taken something from one person, can you rehypothecate it? Can you use it, for example, to post out as collateral to somebody else? So that's the subject tomorrow. But now, as we enter into this subject, and we've seen, by the way, that the Mishnah goes almost imperceptibly from topic to topic. So as we move towards rehypothecation, we're going to begin in the 10th Mishnah of the third chapter with just plain regular use and misuse. And we'll see, as we've seen very often, by the way, in the Mishnah, that custom and practice and normality are incredibly important. Someone who left money in his fellow's keeping, if he bound it up and hung it over his back. This is a bit like carrying your iPhone through a crowded market in your back pocket, walking in, in a street market in Hong Kong with your phone in your back pocket. Oh, not a great idea. But let's keep going. Maybe he gave this money to his son or his daughter, his son or his daughter who were below the age of majority. Or maybe, again, not such a great idea. And maybe he locked them up, but he didn't lock them up properly. Hayav, the Mishnah says, he's liable. Shelo shamar kederech hashomrim, because he didn't guard it in the way that guardians are supposed to guard. So it's really interesting. The Mishnah assumes we know how guardians guard, and it gives various examples of not the way guardians guard, which we can pretty much recognize from our own experience. And if he breaks normal practice, he's going to be liable for any possible loss. And then the Mishnah concludes, "Ve'im shamar kederech hashomrim patur." If he guarded it in the way of guardians, in other words, if he just maintained normal practice, and we've seen this before, by the way, in terms of guarding animals. If he locked the animals up in the normal way, he's not liable for damage which they might create if they jump out. But if he's careless about how he's locked up the animals, then yes, he is going to be liable for the consequences. But what about someone who is professionally allowed to use something left with him? And we're holding on to this idea of money, but now we're going to expand it. So someone left coins with a money changer. So this is someone whose business is trading with money. It's a bit like carrying out a repo transaction with an investment bank whose business is borrowing and lending securities. If you post your securities as collateral, very often you allow the investment bank to repost them to somebody else. So this guy's left coins with a money changer. Someone whose business is money. If they were tied up, he can't use them. So the money changer can't use them if they're tied up, almost like saying, gosh, there's no provision in this contract for rehypothecation. And that means if they're lost, he's actually not responsible. If they're lost, he's not responsible. Let's keep going. Mutarin, if they were loose, yishtamesh b'hem, if the coins, if he just hands over some money and puts it on the counter, the assumption seems to be that the henvani, the money changer, is going to just mingle this with his other assets. Very, very similar to kind of modern financial practice. If they're going to be commingled, well, they can be used. But in that case, in that case, he's going to be responsible. Mutarin yishtamesh b'hem. If they were just loose, he can use them. But that means lefichach imavdu chayav achariyutam. But if that means if they were lost, he's actually responsible for them. And the Rambam is actually going to explain this for us rather nicely. Surim hu sheyeh kesher mushuneh. Surim means that the coins are bound up with an unusual knot. In other words, not just a regular bag, not just a regular purse he's shoved on the counter, but he's actually tied this bag with his knot, or he's put a seal on it. Anything anything other than sealed or tied with a special knot is called loose. And when the Mishnah says that money changer is liable for them, and we haven't even said that he's using them. He just said if he can use them, he's liable. It's because once we permit him to use, he becomes a paid guardian, a shomer sachar, and this is a different category of guardianship, which we'll explain later, the Rambam says. And then he goes on to say, if he actually uses them and then loses them, at that point, he's like a borrower, and his obligation just becomes like any other borrower. And then the Rambam concludes the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda. Now we'll see in a minute what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Let's get back to the Mishnah. Etzel Baal Habayit bein Srurin vein Mutarim lo yishtamesh b'hem. With a householder, if you deposit with a householder, whether they're tied up or not, lo yishtamesh b'hem, we assume when we're putting our money with a money changer, we assume that he's liable to use them, but not with a householder. With a householder, you put money with a householder, you don't expect him to use it. Therefore, if they're lost, he has less responsibility. Unless, of course, he's been negligent or he's stolen them. Now, Kenvani Kaval Habayit Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that a shopkeeper, this is a shopkeeper, not a money changer. A chenvani is a shopkeeper. Chenvani Kaval Habayit Divrei Rabbi Meir. A shopkeeper is like a householder, according to Rabbi Meir. A shopkeeper is not expected to reuse your money, to rehypothecate your securities. He's not like an investment banker, according to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, this is where the Rambam agrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chenvani kal shulchani. Rabbi Yehuda says a shopkeeper is like a money changer. In other words, if you hand over your money to a shopkeeper to keep for you, the assumption is that he may possibly rehypothecate it. He may possibly use it, unless you tied it up in some way that he can't use it, unless you've sealed it or put a special knot on it.